The apartment smelled like fresh paint and catered food. I stood near the balcony doors, watching guests move through rooms my parents had paid for, admiring the hardwood floors, the view, the clean white kitchen that still felt like a showroom instead of a home. Everyone kept calling it, "your new place," smiling at me as if I had achieved something monumental. I smiled back. Technically, it was mine. Legally, it was my father's. That distinction mattered more than anyone in the room realized. My husband was in his element, laughing loudly, giving impromptu tours, slinging his arm around my shoulders as if the entire evening were proof of his success. My mother-in-law moved more slowly, inspecting corners, opening closets, measuring walls with her eyes. At one point she stood in the second bedroom and said, almost to herself, "This will fit my dresser perfectly." I heard it. I pretended not to. For months, there had been subtle suggestions, how it didn't make sense for her to live alone, how family should consolidate, how expensive housing had become. Each time, my husband would say, "We'll figure it out." He never asked me what I thought. By the time everyone gathered around the dining table for a toast, I felt something tightening in my chest. Not fear, anticipation. My husband raised his glass first, thanked my parents for their help, emphasized how, we're starting this new chapter together. Then he turned toward his mother with a bright grin. "Mum, have you decided when you're moving your things in here?" The room didn't explode. It quieted. A few people chuckled, unsure if it was a joke. My mother-in-law smiled too wide. "Sooner rather than later," she said lightly. "I've already started sorting." No one looked at me. It was as if my role in this decision had already been erased. I felt heat crawl up my neck, but I stayed seated. I had rehearsed this scenario privately a dozen times. I had imagined objecting, arguing, making a scene. Instead, I folded my hands in my lap and waited. My father, who had been quietly stirring his drink, stood up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't look angry. He simply said, "That won't be necessary. The apartment is in my name and it's designated for my daughter's sole residence." One sentence. Clean, clear, unmistakable. My mother-in-law's smile faltered first. Color drained from her face in a way that couldn't be hidden by makeup or lighting. My husband turned toward my father slowly, like he'd misheard him. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean," my father replied calmly, "that this property is not a shared family asset. It was purchased to ensure my daughter's security." No additional occupants were discussed or approved. There was no anger in his tone. Only structure. My mother set her glass down very carefully. A cousin near the kitchen suddenly became very interested in refilling drinks. The air felt different, less celebratory, more exposed. My husband forced a laugh. "We're married," he said. "It's our home." My father nodded slightly. "Your marriage is your own matter. The deed is mine." Silence settled, heavy and undeniable. Authority doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives printed in black ink, filed with a clerk, backed by signatures. The rest of the evening unraveled politely. Conversations fragmented. Guests left earlier than planned. After the door closed behind the last one, my husband turned to me. "You set that up," he said. "No," I replied. "You did." He paced the living room. "You embarrassed my mother. You volunteered my space without asking." He stopped walking. The truth wasn't dramatic. It was logistical. I had never agreed to his mother moving in. He had simply assumed I would adapt. For years, I had adjusted quietly. Holiday plans. Financial decisions. His mother's preferences shaping our routines. I told myself compromise was maturity. Standing there in that pristine apartment, I realized compromise had been one-sided. "I need to know something," I said carefully. "When you pictured her living here, where did you see me?" He didn't answer immediately. That silence said more than any argument. The next week was strained but controlled. No shouting. No slammed doors. Just uncomfortable clarity. He tried to renegotiate, framing it as temporary, as supportive, as cultural expectation. I didn't attack those arguments. I simply repeated, "I am not agreeing to it." Something shifted in him when he realized the boundary wasn't my father's alone. It was mine. My parents didn't interfere further. They didn't need to. The paperwork had already done its work. My mother-in-law stopped mentioning furniture. The apartment grew quieter. My marriage did too. We didn't separate. Not immediately, but the dynamic changed. Assumptions had to be spoken now, plans had to be discussed. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a guest in my own life. There was no celebration of victory, just a subtle realignment. Family loyalty had been tested, not by cruelty, but by entitlement. And boundaries, once made visible, are difficult to pretend you didn't see.